I'd like to recognize Senator Sullivan, great state of Alaska.
Thank you. Well, another great discussion on the subcommittee. So I want to thank the ranking member and the chair. I think this is a, I just wish a lot of our colleagues could be hearing, Mr. Dean, your discussion. I never really thought about it that way. About, hey, tourism brings the kind of tip of the spear of investments and buying homes and a vacation home. That's obviously that happens in all of our states. So that's really a great insight. I never really thought about it that way. I've been someone who's kind of been thinking about it on the numbers, and in Alaska, the numbers for us are really big. It's a big part of our economy, like it is for Nevada and Florida and so many other states. So it also helps us with our trade deficit. As you know, tourism are services that count favorably to the goods and service surplus that we need. I just hosted Ambassador Tai up in Alaska last week, the U.S. trade rep, and kind of walked her through a lot of the ideas of promoting tourism. So my question for you and Mr. Hornbuckle is the issue of our tour bus legislation that has within it legislation that I've been pushing for a while, the Visit America Act. And I'm not a big government guy. I don't think the ranking member is. I'm not sure about the chair, but either way. But I do think to your point, our tourism sector, given how important it is to the economy of the United States, really doesn't have a strong singular voice. Now, I know we just had Mr. Harris testifying, but if you look at his responsibilities, I mean, he's got a huge portfolio, right? And tourism is kind of at the bottom. So here's my question to both of the witnesses. First of all, the Tourism and Travel Advisory Board, I think, has done a really good job. In my legislation, we have two kind of things that would, we think, help make our government have a more strong, steady, focused stay on tourism. Number one, make the Travel and Tourism Advisory Board permanent, right? Pretty simple. Keep you guys focused and make sure you know that you're going to be around for a while. And then second is we have this idea of an Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Senate confirmed, to be focused solely on tourism, period. No offense to Mr. Harris, but we want somebody every day to get up and say, hey, what are we doing for this industry? And it's important because when you look at, say, most G20 countries, not only do they have that, they all have tourism ministers, cabinet officials in charge of tourism. And we don't have anything. We don't even have a Senate-confirmed position. So to you and Mr. Hornbuckle, what would your views on making the advisory committee permanent, but this idea of a senior American official who does this every day when they wake up? Senate confirmed, not Mr. Harris. That's their only job. The way most other countries in the world have that. Actually, like I said, at a cabinet level position. What's your thought about that? And then Mr. Hornbuckle.
Happy to offer my thoughts, but I'll defer to my chair, Mr. Hornbuckle, to respond first, and then I'll follow up afterwards, if that's okay.
Good, sure.
Senator, thank you for your question. Yes and yes. In the context of, I think, the work we've been able to accomplish, particularly through Secretary Raimondo, and now again, obviously a recent appointment, Assistant Secretary Harris, has been meaningful. Much like Puerto Rico, Nevada, where my company employs over 50,000 people in Southern Nevada alone, we are the industry of the state. And what happens in our industry happens in the state, and so goes its economy. And so to the extent that there would be potentially a federal position that's appointed by the Senate that would be solely focused on an industry that captures 1 in every 20 jobs and is the lifeblood of maybe a half a dozen states in this nation, and it's critical, highly supportive of that. to the extent we all do a great job locally, we all do a great job, generally speaking, in promoting our own tourism. But the effort, the energy, and the coordination it would take to take, whether it's federal monies through infrastructure or ultimately even tourism money, and focus it and have somebody who wakes up every day, that what gets focused on gets accomplished. It's quite simple. And so we would be highly supportive of that.
Great, good. Thank you very much. Mr. Dean, you have a thought on that?
I would echo what Mr. Hornbuckle said. I absolutely think this is a necessary and important next step. When you think about the magnitude of the travel and tourism industry, the jobs created, the revenues, the taxes, to borrow from you, to have someone who wakes up every morning asking, what can we do to take that next step? And not just on a national scale, but how do we take these programs and work it through this intricate network of regional tourism promoters, state tourism organizations, destination marketers? I think having that point person to lead that effort actually complements the work being done by the National Travel and Tourism Office and Assistant Secretary Harris. So I see it as a plus up, certainly not a replacement. And more so to that point, I'm a bit biased because I've served multiple terms on the Travel and Tourism Advisory Board, but I do think statutorily guaranteeing this sends a powerful message to the industry that it's important to engage. Of course, we have to make sure that the board continues to be diverse and inclusive and reaches all different segments of destinations as well as industry segments, which I think it currently does in many respects. So certainly think that's an important, and I would take it one step further. My hope is the Department of Transportation will perhaps follow the same path, update their national travel and tourism infrastructure strategy. And I believe, you know better than I do, prior legislation actually called for a similar position in the DOT. In a dream scenario for me, but maybe it's not a dream because I'm speaking to the people who can make this reality, I think every major federal agency should have a top-level, highly placed individual that is there to make certain that the travel and tourism industry and the federal government are closely aligned. It happens sometimes not efficiently because we find the right people within the administration, but I think having a highly placed leadership position in major agencies would not only make us more efficient, I think it would help the industry better liaise with the federal government, and I think it would prepare the federal government to be even more impactful in helping grow this important industry that impacts every community throughout our great nation.
Yeah, great. And Madam Chair, you know, just following up on two other points, I think, from this hearing. One is that, you know, this is also an industry that is so impactful for states like ours. It's really impactful, but I think it impacts everybody. And it's also an industry that everybody supports, right? Let's face it, there's certain industries, my state's a big energy producer. Okay, we got some colleagues who aren't so, thrilled about producing oil and gas. I think we need it. I think the men and women who produce oil and gas are heroic in producing something that we need and help us win wars and make our country strong. But not everybody's a big supporter. But the tourism sector, I mean, what U.S. senator is not a big supporter of the tourism sector? That's one. But I think, you know, just looking at Mr. Harris's portfolio, right? 7 different offices, many of which are very different. Trade, manufacturing. I mean, so again, no offense to him, but I think the witness on the first panel almost proves our point, which is having someone focused on this industry day in and day out. Senate confirmed, so it's a high-level position, is good, and it helps us compete with other countries who have minister-level government officials in charge. So hopefully we'll keep moving on this.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. I'll tell you, I think everyone on this committee thinks that we should have a national director for tourism and travel.